Hey everybody, this is Dr. Lori Shemek.
And I'm Omar Cumberbatch. You're listening to This Podcast Burns Fat. Hey Lori, how are you?
I am doing great. Yes, happy to be here. How are you doing?
Fantastic.
Good.
Happy Thanksgiving coming up.
Yeah, Thanksgiving is coming up, and it's a buzz in this household.
Oh yeah, here as well. So,
Yeah.
usually we do our yearly episode with the Thanksgiving and how it rolls into the rest of the holidays, and just giving tips on how to keep the weight off and even lose some weight during this time is always something that we always try to do. But this year we kind of came to an agreement that it's like last year's episode was so comprehensive. I don't think that we need to go into it like that this year. So we decided to just bring you like a great guest instead and just kind of keep it moving. So if anybody wants to take a listen to that, you could definitely go into our archives and see about that episode, which gives awesome feedback around what we need to do to navigate the holidays.
Right. And along with that, and just to let you know, you can navigate the holidays in a healthy way, but also enjoy them too. So
Absolutely.
But we have a wonderful guest. Her name is Monique Attinger, and she's a low oxalate coach. And oxalates are compounds that really exacerbate or can cause things like arthritis and digestive issues, Lyme disease, just really exacerbate things, health conditions that are already existing. And so when you lower oxalates, they make a real difference in your health. And she leads the way. She's very knowledgeable about the subject. And it's not just for kidney stones, right, Omar?
Right. And that's the one thing I love about being the host of this show. I didn't even know what an oxalate was until Monique came on. Obviously, you're familiar with her work, but it was really eye-opening and something that I feel that I have to just keep an eye on too, because it's very important. And again, sometimes you can eat the quote unquote perfect diet and not really understand that these things can affect you, which you just weren't aware of. So
right. And so you're trying to eat a really healthy diet and you're wondering why things aren't changing. And
exactly.
So she sets us straight.
Absolutely. So yeah, let's jump into the show.
Okay.
Hey Monique, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm good, Omar.
Hey.
How are you?
Hi, Monique. Thank you for stopping by.
Yeah,
Finally.
thanks, Lori. This is great. And I've been following you, and you've been following me for so long on Twitter. This is it's fun to meet even virtually.
Oh, I love it. And I'm so happy you're here because I know you're going to help so many people today. I think, so let me introduce you. This is Monique Attinger, and she's a certified holistic nutritionist, and she works with people who want to reduce their oxalate intake, and she'll talk about that. And she did discover after her daughter had an oxalate problem that really changed her health from serious to healthy. And so she's been in the oxalate world now for over 10 years. And we're really happy to have her because this relatively unknown area of health is, I think, extremely important to know about. So Monique, if you would just, first of all, welcome. And if you would just give us your background story, because I know you have one.
Yes, and I'll try to do the Reader's Digest condensed version. But long story short, I was 48. I was not doing well. I had crashed and burned out of a consulting job. And I was working as an independent consultant in the IT world, actually, and had just started to get so unwell that I didn't have the energy to basically keep my business afloat. And at the same time, I'd married late. So I married at 36. I had my first baby at 40. I had my second at 45. So at 48, I had an almost 3-year-old and almost 8-year-old.
Oh, wow.
And I was starting to seriously wonder if I was going to be able to live to see them grow up, because it wasn't that I had like a big diagnosis yet at that point, but I was struggling with like a whole variety of things that had just depleted me. So my thyroid was low, my adrenals were low. I was taking handfuls of digestive enzymes to eat my food. I had poor exercise resilience. I had very poor immune resilience. Like I'd get a bug and I'd be sick for weeks and weeks. And it's even hard to remember now what life was like then, honestly.
Wow.
Because I had terrible insomnia. I would fall asleep dead at like 9 at night. I'd wake up wide awake at 1 and not be able to get back to sleep until like 4, and then have to get up for the day at 6 with my kids. And it was like,
what a nightmare.
It was kind of, and it was almost like Chinese water torture, because it wasn't like I had something big and I sort of knew what it was and I could do something about it. It was like I had all these smaller things that were kind of like just taking away my enthusiasm and my energy and my health, but like death by, water torture, drip, drip, drip. And then in that time period, somewhere around the time when my daughter was about 2.5, and I was weaning her. I'd done extended nursing with her. So I was weaning her. And as I was weaning her, she was starting to have these really strange issues, like rashes that looked almost more like chemical burns, and pain on urination. And she was in like, she had been gone through potty training at the same time. And so what I was noticing is in the morning, she was wearing a pull-up at bed at night. I would change her in the morning, and she would be like, her tissues, her labia and vulva were irritated and red. And sometimes when I changed her, I would put on a little bit of zinc cream very gently because she looked sore, and she would weep. Like there's a difference between crying and weeping. She was weeping. And I was like, this is not right. And it wasn't my first child. So I was thinking, it's not my first rodeo. It's not, like, it doesn't look like yeast to me. I'm doing all the yeast things. She's almost dry 24 hours a day. Like, what the heck is going on here? So went to our functional naturopathic doctor, who had been treating me from the time my son was very young. So 5 years or more at the time when I went in there with Raina and described what was going on. And he'd had training through the Defeat Autism Now group. And he had learned about oxalate, and he looks at me and he says to me, I think your daughter has an oxalate problem. And what I remember is looking at him and saying, what's an oxalate? Because I'd never heard this word. And even though I was coming from the IT world, I'd been a bit of a nutrition geek ever since I was young. I'm sort of surprised I never went into nutrition before I did. But this was totally new to me. But because it was my daughter, I was like in 100% right out of the gate. And knowing that she was maybe a little bit like her mom and might be a little strong-willed, I said to her, you and I are going to eat like this. We're going to find out just how good it is, right? Because I figured I had to model this behavior in order for her to be able to eat a different diet. It's like, if everybody at the table was eating other things than her, I knew that was not going to work.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
So I start on this diet with her, and don't I see the needle move on every problem I've got all at once?
Wow.
And I went, what is that? Like the thyroid was getting better. My digestion was getting better. I was seeing improvements in my sleep. My energy levels were better. I had sort of low grade muscle pain. Sometimes that went away. And I'm like, what? And so at that point, I dove in head first into researching this thing. And I've got a master's in library and information science. So I'm a little bit dangerous if I get researching something. And So long story short, my daughter's now 16. She's healthy. My son, who also turned out to need an oxalate diet, even though, again, the naturopathic doctor didn't know about him. He had problems with allergies and asthma and sort of lung issues. Like he was very quick to have reactions that involved his breathing. He'd been a kid who had gotten croup more than once. Anyhow, that all goes away with him. And my multiple different things that were going on, which didn't exactly look like they were related to each other either, like your digestion and your thyroid and your muscles and your, had some joint issues and insomnia. And, it didn't look like all of those were all the same thing. But under the hood, it turns out there was this one consistent trigger, and all of them were getting better as I came off this one consistent trigger. And so I went, okay, if the only lever I pulled is oxalate, I'm pretty sure this is a thing. And, it was such a game changer for me and for the health of my family. I ended up going back to school, retraining as a nutritionist and starting into this work because all I could think of was if somebody who knew about oxalate recognized my daughter because her symptoms were more distinctive, but never picked out me or my son, how many other people could oxalate be impacting? And nobody has any idea because we're not looking for it.
So I guess the natural question, I know we've heard the word a bunch, and I was very, very interested to learn more about it. What exactly are oxalates and where are they to be affecting us
to
such a degree?
Yes. Okay. So the thing about oxalate is that many of the foods that we think of as being the healthiest for us are actually really high in oxalate, which I find really fascinating because it's almost as if we've decided that, the nutrients count, but the anti-nutrients don't count. And so this traditional nutritional advice, which I was following as closely as I could, tells us that things like spinach and beets and chard and buckwheat and teff and rhubarb and nuts and these are all really good for you. Turmeric's really good for you. Turns out these are all really exceptionally high in oxalate. And in fact,
turmeric.
Oh
yeah. No.
Yeah, I know. And this is the thing is that every time I made a mistake with oxalate, it was with something I thought was really healthy. That happened so many times. It became a running joke in our household here. And in fact, I keep telling people I'm going to make T-shirts that say, when in doubt, blame oxalate. Because it's really quite astonishing how many of these foods we thought were extra healthy are actually really rich sources of oxalate. So with that said, the challenge with oxalate is that it's in plants. It's not in plants in a way that's predictable. So that would make the diet a lot simpler.
Challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. But it is challenging because it's not necessarily predictable. So you can't say with gluten, you go, okay, well, if it's a grain, it might have gluten in it because gluten's in grains, but you don't have that kind of nice, handy pattern, except for this one, which really throws the nutritional world on its head. All plants have some oxalate. All animal products are low to zero. And so here we are moving steadily towards plant-based eating. And what we're doing quite inadvertently is increasing oxalate in our diet with each adjustment to taking in more plants and less animal products.
So is oxalate an actual compound that's found to protect the plant? Is that what it's been? That's what it's for generally? Well,
it's one of the things it's for. Plants actually use oxalate for a number of things. One of the things is, protection from predation. So when you talk about something like a spinach leaf, it's very interesting that there's so much oxalate in a spinach leaf in the form of like microcrystals that an animal's like an insect's mouth, structures in the mouth can be broken by those crystals.
Wow, that's really interesting.
It's very interesting.
That doesn't happen to us humans, but maybe
because
our intestinal.
Our teeth can stick up to that. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's so interesting because we've got, like you mentioned, the anti-nutrients that happen in plants, and oxalate is, I guess, now considered an anti-nutrient.
Yeah, definitely. But in fact, it's actually a mild poison. So there's cases of oxalate poisoning that happen fairly regularly, and usually because of inadvertent exposure to something that's high oxalate in a food. So apparently in some countries, they'll use things like banana leaves to wrap up food to go, and banana leaves are very high in oxalate.
And so just it can transfer onto foods? Simply wrapping?
The soluble stuff can. So you actually have two forms of oxalate that occur in foods. So you have the stuff that's bound to minerals and can form these microcrystals. So that's insoluble oxalate. So that won't, that can't contaminate another food by contact generally, unless you've got a food where it's got small hairs that are made out of oxalate or have a lot of oxalate in them, that might be able to transfer. But insoluble is as per its name. It's not going to dissolve in a fluid or anything.
So what are some of the health effects of, I know it probably runs a gamut, right? It just, between you and your daughter, there were many different conditions. So, but some of the health conditions that are a result of ingesting, I guess, would it be too many oxalates?
Generally speaking, yeah.
Okay.
So small amounts of oxalate, our body knows to excrete it. So we can't detox it per se. It's not manipulated by the liver. So, but our bodies understand oxalate because we produce small amounts as part of normal metabolic function. So that would be the soluble oxalate, though. That's not, we're not producing crystals. We're producing the anion, and then that's going to head out when the kidneys scrape it out of the bloodstream, or when we secrete it back into the gut. And that kind of soluble oxalate can be in food. So that's the stuff that we could absorb from our diet.
So does oxalate affect, I know obviously the answer is it definitely affects everybody different. Are some people more prone to this, and why?
That's a question which I think there's still a lot of discussion about. But what I'd say is there's kind of a perfect storm going on with us being able to eat large amounts of high oxalate food. And with repercussions where we're not always going to be clear where the chicken or the egg is. But I'll give you an example. One of the things that oxalate can do is drive inflammation. And I don't know about you two folks, but it seems like everybody and their dog has leaky gut these days.
Right. It's true. Yeah.
And part of that could be related to these physical microcrystals of oxalate that are in some of these high oxalate foods. So you can actually get physical damage from microcrystals that form from oxalate.
And
in
the gut, for example.
And so, yeah, the gut, if you think about it, if you're eating really, really high oxalate food every day, and you've got a constant stream of these microcrystals going through your gut, well, the gut's, it's almost like fine sandpaper going over it.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So, and once the gut is leaky, then we can absorb oxalate more freely, which of course is not helpful. So if you've started to try to eat a healthier diet, the gut gets leaky, then you may actually be absorbing more of the oxalate that's present. But the soluble oxalate basically works by straight ahead chemistry with the gut, which is if you have an area of high concentration of something, separated from an area of low concentration by a semi-permeable layer, like the gut wall, that can move from inside the gut to into the body by passive diffusion. So we have all kinds of things going on. And we also have the issue of antibiotics and the fact that some of the most important gut bacteria that help to degrade oxalate, that will actually use oxalate as food, are very fragile in the face of antibiotics. So most of us will have lost them. And the one in particular I'm thinking of is an oxalate obligate, which means that's all it eats. And it's called Oxalobacter formigenes. And
say that 3 times fast.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. But the thing is, we don't really know how to colonize it. There's all kinds of research going on as to how we get more of it in the gut. How much oxalate will it protect us from? There's so many things we don't know here. And being able to eat like raw spinach 365 days a year. Well, I'm in my 60s. I remember when spinach was very seasonal. You had it for, a few weeks, maybe in the summertime. You always ate it boiled. You never ate it raw.
Right.
There's all kinds of things that we're doing in terms of the difference between traditional food preparation and how we eat it now, which may also be increasing how much oxalate we're taking in. So many factors. It's really quite astonishing.
Well, I guess to follow up on that, just because you did put the spinach and everyone thinks spinach is the superfood and whatnot. So Can you just give us like a basic list? I know you touched on a little bit before some surprises, but just really like which foods are specifically high in oxalate and maybe what can we do? Like you said, boiling spinach could help maybe reduce it and so that we can still enjoy the foods that we think are good for us.
Well, there's certain ones where we might be able to use something like boiling as a really simple method to help us be able to include that food in our diet so that we're not necessarily having to remove everything.
Or cooking.
So boiling is the most reliable way to actually break down. I'm not going to say breakdown. Oxalate itself is a very stable molecule. So we tend not to have normal cooking, normal fermentation, able to really break down a lot of oxalate. And the research on it is extraordinarily variable. So, it's an unreliable method in most cases to look at baking or heat or cold or fermentation. But boiling works because if you've got a food that's got a lot of soluble oxalate, that's going to move out into the cooking water. And then as long as you're not consuming the cooking water, you've removed that oxalate from the food.
So soup is out.
Well, here's a great example. Like I make a chicken potato leek soup. It's very tuned though to the oxalate because potatoes are actually quite high in oxalate. So that's a very sad thing for my family because I married a Dutch man and he really loves potatoes. Anyway, so what I do is I take the potatoes, I peel, chop, boil first. Then they go into the soup. So I've eliminated as much oxalate from those potatoes as possible before it ever goes in the soup. And then the other thing that's a little bit higher oxalate is leek. And so rather than putting in 100% leek, I put in half leek and half shallots. And rather than putting in 100% potato, I put half potato and half cauliflower. And my husband, who has a chef for a sister and who took some chef's training himself, actually likes my chicken potato leek, which of course is more than just chicken, potato, and leek, better than the original. So I figure if I've managed to hack a recipe so that I've gotten past his taste buds, I'm doing okay.
So like a short list right now would be rhubarb. What else did you mention?
Well, actually, I've got I've got a list of the dirty dozen. So this is the Oxalate dirty dozen. So like the environmental working group does their dirty dozen, this is the Oxalate dirty dozen. So I've been thinking about updating it, but it's still a pretty good list. And I've got number 1 is almonds.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And the problem with almonds is that there's just so much oxalate in there. And of course, we're now using almond flour and all these other things. It's really easy to have almonds, comprising 500, 600, 700 milligrams of your oxalate in a day.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I remember avocados aren't high in oxalates, right? They're very low.
No.
Okay, good. Just checking.
Yeah, it's a good plant and it's not high in oxalates.
Oh, good.
Sounded like a selfish question there, Lori.
Yeah, you got me.
Yeah. So my number 2 is definitely spinach. Spinach is, one of the really big guys. And
rhubarb.
Not too many people are upset about that. Rhubarb is actually one of the highest oxalate foods we still call food. So
wow.
When I was a kid, most people had a backyard rhubarb plant. And as a kid, I was told never eat those leaves. Like even insects don't usually eat rhubarb leaves. Like turns out that what's in there that'll kill you is oxalate.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I was just thinking when I was a little girl, my grandmother had a garden. I was like 4 or 5 and I remember eating the leaves.
It's really.
I'm surprised I'm still alive. Okay.
You really can do damage to a little kid with a rhubarb leaf. So I'm glad you didn't take yourself out.
Me too. Thanks.
Now this one people will hate me for, dark chocolate.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, that is a tough one. And what I find that I do is, like, every once in a while, there's something about the flavor of chocolate. Most of us, enjoy a little bit. And what I'll do is go and have like an exquisite, like truffle or something where the outside is a thin layer of chocolate and the inside might be a cream filling. And maybe I have that with a little cup of espresso with my husband on a date. And that, like, serving size is what I'm trying to say. It matters, right? So sometimes you can have a little bit of something, but you just can't have the large quantities that we might be used to. And yes, turmeric, like people aren't going to love me for that one either. But when I want to use something like turmeric in a recipe, I will buy bulk curcumin powder and I will use that instead.
Oh, curcumin. Okay, so that's better.
Yeah, you're getting all the benefits. You get the flavor.
And you're getting the active component of turmeric for health purposes. Yeah.
Yeah. But instead of 50 milligrams of oxalate in a teaspoon, you get about 0.1.
Wow, that's huge.
It is huge. So you can still have your golden milk and get the anti-inflammatory benefits. You just leave all the oxalate behind.
That's a great tip. Great tip.
Yeah. So beets and their greens are bad guys.
So are all leafy greens high in oxalate or just spinach?
No, which is really good news. Like, so we eat arugula, we eat turnip greens, we eat radish greens, which turn out to be really good, and they're very low in oxalate. So no, it's not all greens. It's just the ones, and certain kinds of kale are quite low. So if you like lacinato or like rather than a conventional curly kale, if you get a purple kale, which still has the jagged leaf, but it doesn't have the oxalate.
So I guess I've got a couple questions, but one is there a potential for people who eat a high oxalate diet to gain weight from the oxalates themselves?
They could for 2 reasons. One, oxalate appears to accumulate over time in the thyroid. And that's another one of those places where we just have epidemic levels of people with thyroid issues. And so if your thyroid's being impacted, that might affect your weight gain. And the other thing is, because it can drive inflammation, you can be gaining weight, but it's really inflammatory fluid, right? So,
right. And also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, those kinds of things plus oxalate can be impacting our ability to detox. So that's another place where we may be hanging on to things kind of inappropriately because we're not able to get it out.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. So one thing that I wanted to ask you about is that a lot of people have joint pain, and we hear a lot about crystals in the joints. And is the oxalate issue something that we need to be concerned about in that area?
There is some research I just read recently, Lori, where they were looking at if somebody's got arthritis, but it doesn't seem to be proceeding according to a diagnostic pattern or like in a predictable way, that one of the things that people getting treatment and doctors should be looking for is oxalate crystals in the joints.
Mm-hmm.
That does seem to be another place where they can congregate. And interestingly enough, back in my 20s, long before I knew anything about oxalate, I went through a period of being treated with suspected rheumatoid arthritis. And I did make changes in my diet at that time. And that went away. But at the time when I was seeing the rheumatologist, she attempted to take synovial fluid from my knees so she could see what the sedimentation rate was. And she could not get clear fluid from my knees because the inside of my knees were bleeding.
Oh, geez.
And I'm very suspicious that I had oxalate crystals. And when I changed my diet, I did a few things like took gluten out. Gluten-based foods can have a fair amount of oxalate. And I also started to do a bit more of an anti-inflammatory kind of approach. So yeah, I was a nutrition geek from way back.
That's great.
That got me most of my joint function back, and it got me off the rheumatoid arthritis drugs that I was on. But I didn't get sort of full power back until I went low oxalate. And then all of a sudden I noticed how much more stable my ankles were, my knees were. It was really fascinating.
Oh, that really is amazing.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm curious about is obviously a lot of us have to reassess our diets, but is there anything that can help, maybe for lack of a better word, flush oxalates out of our body so that they don't stay in our body and causing all this disruption?
Right. That's a great question. So the one thing that I'd say is when oxalate goes in and it starts to accumulate, it's bad for you, but you can't really tell. When you can tell is later when you're sick, right? So when oxalate comes in, our health status is often better than when we've realized that we've got the oxalate problem and we're trying to get it out. So just for people who are thinking about trying to use strategies to move it more quickly, just know that it's pro-inflammatory. It's like going to have a second kick at the can, if you will, when it's leaving the body. Mm. So anybody who wants to do some of these things, like just keep in mind what your own personal level of health resilience is. So for somebody who's very healthy and kind of nosedives in their oxalate intake and then stimulates things to try and get the oxalate out as quickly as possible, they may do fine. But for somebody who was in the position that I was in, I was lucky I did as well as I did, because when I went low oxalate, we didn't realize that if you went low too quickly, the body moves it out too aggressively, and that's actually really challenging and can be very stressful and can actually have you temporarily much sicker than you were when you started. So care and caution on this one. But one of the things that the research supports, and I've actually had some of my clients do once they're feeling fairly, resilient, like they can handle it, is things like sauna.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. It's good for so many things.
It's good for so many things. And interestingly enough, there is research which shows that people who have kidney stones, and the majority of kidney stones are oxalate based. So if people have kidney stones, regular use of the sauna helps to reduce their risk. So
it helps to detox the body for sure. Yeah.
So that's one thing that you could do to move oxalate. And the other thing that you can do to move oxalate, and this is kind of, I tell people I'm going to give them a spa schedule. So the other part of the spa schedule is Epsom salts, baking soda baths. And the reason why this works is the combination of magnesium and sulfate with the Epsom salts. And sulfate is one of the compounds in the body that competes with oxalate for uptake into the cells. So you want sulfate to win. And when you have more sulfate available, the body may be able to move some of the, I'm going to call it stranded oxalate in the cells out. And when oxalate's moving through the body, if you have additional minerals on board, it can be really helpful because oxalate's a chelator. So this combination of magnesium and sulfate in Epsom salts is a great one. And you have kind of a similar situation with bicarbonate, that cell transporters that move bicarbonate into cells, those cell transporters move oxalate as well. And so anytime when oxalate's been really rich in the body, these cell transporters may have moved oxalate into the cells as opposed to moving it out of the cells. And if you provide more bicarbonate to the body, you get that same sort of benefit where cells that needed bicarbonate can pull it in, and that may give them the capacity to get rid of some of the oxalate that's on board. But yeah, you want to do these things a bit slowly to sort of see how much like stimulation of inflammation or other things might happen when you do it. But that's people's spa schedule. I'll say, okay, day one, you do Epsom salts and baking soda in a bath, and that sort of gets your mineral levels up. That gets you things like, sulfate and bicarbonate. And then day two, you do a sauna. So anything that's been liberated by the bath and is in the bloodstream, you're kind of getting that out. And then day three, you rest. You give your body a break. You don't keep doing that. Mm-hmm. And so I'll have people do this wave approach where they're doing either Epsom salts or sauna first, followed by the other, and then a day off. And they might do 2 waves of that in a week.
Wow, that's wonderful. I love that. So does hydrating well reduce the oxalate load?
It can certainly help because generally speaking, I suspect that the kidneys are doing the lion's share of the work. They are not the only system by any means that can get rid of oxalate for you. We can secrete it back into the gut, which is really interesting. We can be getting rid of it being the respiratory system and the lungs. We can be moving it out via mucous membranes, which is intriguing. And we can, of course, be sweating it out via the skin. So it's not like the body only has one way to start to move it out. But, the kidneys really do a lot of the work because they're filtering the bloodstream. And most oxalate, as you're getting it out of the system, is going to be secreted from where it is into the bloodstream on the way out.
And not to beat the issue to death with just getting out of your body. Why is it so difficult? Is it because it crystallizes and like kind of inserts itself into the body as opposed to just a regular toxin, like say my favorite alcohol, where it's just your body kind of gets rid of it?
Well, yeah. See, the thing with oxalate is if it didn't become stranded in the tissues, it would be a whole different ballgame. But because cell transporters will actually move it into tissues, it becomes a bit of a bear to get it out. And once it's inside a cell, it can actually end up in the mitochondria, and it's a mitochondrial toxin. So if the mitochondria is not producing energy properly, the other thing is oxalate using a cell transporter, that's active transport. It needs energy to be able to get it out. So it's those kinds of things which make it more than a substance like alcohol, I'm not sure we traffic it into the tissues the same way, although I have to admit I don't know as much. So I'm not sure that it's a parallel. But the other thing is this pro-inflammatory issue, like
especially with the mitochondria. That's huge.
Well, the mitochondria, and it triggers the inflammasome. So this is a bad guy, right? Oxalate's not our friend. The fact that some of us do fine with it in our diet, or appear to be doing fine with it in our diet, I suspect it's because some of us are outliers. It's not because oxalate's good for any of us. I tell the story about my Swiss grandmother. My Swiss grandmother died when she was 94. She had smoked for 80 years.
Wow.
She did not die of smoking-related disease. In fact, she'd been out walking her dog and had fallen, and through a combination of bad luck and trying to chase down her dog, she fell and she hit a curb and she ended up with a brain injury. So in the end, it was not smoking that killed my grandmother.
Isn't that something? Well, that's usually, people that have the gift of, or the blessing of good genes, they typically live a long time. Yeah. They can do those things.
Yeah. And so people will say to me, well, my grandfather ate borscht all his life, right? Mm-hmm. So shouldn't I be able to do that? And I'll go, my Swiss grandmother smoked her whole life. Shouldn't I be able to do that?
That's a really good point. Yeah.
If these are outliers, some people are outliers, and maybe they excrete better. Maybe they don't absorb as freely. Maybe the gut was never leaky. There could be, again, this perfect storm of things. And frankly, my grandmother ate a fairly high oxalate diet, but she didn't eat it constantly, right?
I wonder if there's some genetic. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, we're now eating almonds and spinach and rhubarb and stuff all year long. Like we never have a break from any of these foods, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I wonder if there's a genetic component to how well you do excrete oxalate or any of these toxins in the body. I would think there would be. Yeah. We have genes that protect us and keep us well and help us heal better. Yeah. Reduce inflammation. Yeah. So I was just wondering if you could give us an example of a couple meals, like let's say breakfast and dinner, that would be a low oxalate meal.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it doesn't have to be deprivation. That's if any message I'd want to give, it's that, and that variety is your friend. So, part of the issue with people having very high oxalate diets is they're eating the same things all the time, right? So you can absolutely sit down, eat a lovely meal, and have a low oxalate one. So my favorite breakfast for me would be the one that my husband makes. And we've gone to a very non-traditional breakfast, so people could eat this for any light meal that they wanted during the day. But he will saute wild-caught salmon. We'll eat that with a little bit of like a peach yogurt or something, almost like a sauce over the salmon. And then we'll have like raw vegetable strips, like red pepper and cucumber. And then maybe we'll have some strawberries on the plate. I mean, it's a beautiful plate to sit down and eat. It's nutrient dense. I love that. And
that's beautiful.
I don't really eat too many grains anymore because I just feel better without it. But, for people who like to have a grain in the morning, like I will sometimes make for my kids, like a porridge, but using cooked rice and mixed with oatmeal. And then we add a little bit of maple syrup for them. And maybe I put on cinnamon extract, because cinnamon's another one of those really high ones. So I'll take a dry cinnamon extract. I'll sprinkle that over the top. And instead of throwing on something like almonds as a mix with that, we will use something like baru nuts, which are
those are good.
A nut that's just gone to the market in North America. And I love those things. They are so yummy. And
they really are.
As opposed to 300 milligrams of oxalate in an ounce of almonds, you've got 1.7 milligrams of oxalate in an ounce of barra nuts.
Are oats high in oxalate?
They're relatively high. So it depends on, like, they're nothing like spinach. But for a family like us where people really did better, if we stayed in like the 60 to 80 milligram range of oxalate for a day, like a reasonable serving of oatmeal could be 15 to 20 milligrams. And that's a lot of oxalate to kind of blow on something like oatmeal.
Yeah, exactly.
So, we're
So
more
I guess,
likely to eat other things like eggs or, some kind of meat and, low oxalate fresh stuff for breakfast.
It dawns on me that I wonder if one of the reasons people that go on for example, a carnivore diet, literally do so well is because they're not getting any oxalate, really.
It would not surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Especially when they talk about adaptation as a big issue with carnivore. And for some people, they'll say it's not unusual for quote unquote adaptation to take a year or two. That sounds like oxalate leaving the body to me, because oxalate doesn't leave fast. It tends to leave in waves and it takes time. Like, it would be so simple if oxalate left at a predictable way so that you could kind of build up some strategies for dealing with it, and then away you go and you just do the same thing forever. But that's not how it works. So I would not be surprised at all that one of the reasons that carnivore works is you're taking down this really inflammatory factor, which can be affecting the body systemically. Like, it's not just one system either.
And probably keto as well. Are there any supplements that may help?
Yeah, it's really helpful to take, some good quality and probably broad spectrum minerals, because oxalate is a double negative ion. It looks for what I call a preferred dance partner, which is usually a double positive mineral. And so a lot of us can be, if not fully deficient, kind of insufficient in minerals. And so if you're taking more minerals, that can really help you weather what oxalate can be doing. And, a lot of us can be short in things like calcium and magnesium, but it may even be some of the trace minerals, because anything that's a double positive mineral can be impacted. So a lot can be helped by taking some good mineral supplementation. And from the standpoint of supporting the mitochondria and the basic metabolism there, energy production and so on, B6 is a great catch. So I think of B6, B1, and biotin as the three musketeers when it comes to oxalate. And so, if people just wanted to get, it doesn't have to be a big dose, a lower dose, B complex, preferably the bioavailable forms of the Bs. That's going to give them some much needed support when it comes to, energy production and what's happening at the cellular level when oxalate's stranded in there.
Wow, that's great information.
Yeah, now this has been a fascinating show. So before I let you go, and just giving you all your information so that we can keep up with what you're doing and, just keep on getting to know this oxalate situation a little better, is there any testing that someone can go and see if there isn't actually an issue with the oxalate?
Yeah, there's two. There's two that are sort of the ones that you can get. I've had lots of people ask me about oxalate blood tests. At this point in time, there is an oxalate blood test. Most people can only get it if they're in hospital, and most doctors can only order it if the patient has failing kidneys. So as much as it would be interesting to see what's in our blood from an oxalate standpoint, really what we've got that we can use are urine tests. One of them is an organic acids test, and it will actually give you values for glycolic acid, glyceric acid, and oxalic acid. And that can be really helpful in terms of understanding both how much oxalic acid may be impacting you, but glyceric and glycolic are precursors that we can metabolize into oxalate. So if they're high, that might be giving you some ideas too. So you do have the organic acids test. It's not a slam dunk because you can get a test that looks like your oxalate's low when your oxalate really isn't low, because it's a spot test. It's not really, it's not picking up the trend, right?
Yeah. And plus they're being stored in tissue, et cetera.
Yeah.
So it's not circulating in the blood. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a slam dunk, but it is one of the tests that can be helpful. And the other one is really simple. It's a 24-hour urine oxalate assay where you literally collect your urine for 24 hours and then they examine that and find all the oxalate that you've output in a 24-hour period. Now, it used to be that the Mayo Clinic had something on their website which said that if you had over 45 milligrams of oxalate in a daily urine, that you could be diagnosed with hyperoxaluria, which literally means you just have too much oxalate in your urine. But the interesting thing is that information's gone. But I've had this test done. I managed to talk my doctor into giving it to me. Again, most people can't get a test like this done unless they've got kidney problems. But my poor doctor, I knew him from when before he was a doctor. And so occasionally I can call on that friendship thing.
Right.
Anyway, so the ranges for that test have been made quite large. So you have to know a little bit about oxalate yourself in order to really get the clear picture here. But given that it used to be that at 45 milligrams of oxalate, you could be diagnosed with hyperoxaluria, the ranges now call up to 300 milligrams of oxalate in your urine like normal.
Wow. They really expanded, didn't they?
They really expanded it. And my doctor, fortunately, was smart enough. I threw a test at 293 milligrams of oxalate in a day. And he said, that's not right. And I said, I can tell you exactly how much oxalate I'm eating a day because I track it. So
I'm the queen of oxalate.
Yes, I can tell you that's not right. And even when I had a second test, just to see how I was doing a couple of years later, I was still throwing 100 milligrams of oxalate a day. And I was like, I'm not eating anywhere near that. So
wow. That's a great example of, the error you can come into.
Yeah. It because your body's not releasing it all at once. And that may be a kindness because I can't even imagine how much oxalate I would have been releasing on a daily basis if my body would just trying to flush it all at once.
That's amazing. So if you can, let us know how we can keep up with what you're doing, your website, your social media handles, and email address, anything that we could do that could keep abreast of this oxalate situation.
Absolutely. I've got a website, lowoxcoach.com. I do have a blog there. For those who want to read a little bit more about the Oxalate Dirty Dozen, I've got a part 1 and part 2. So you get to read about the first 6, then you get to read about the second 6. And I do post things periodically there, although I have to admit my blog has been ignored a bit. I will have to get back to putting more stuff there. I do, though, also have a Patreon group. So patreon.com/lowoxcoach. And part of what I'm trying to do there is help people be able to understand about oxalate, but also how to make it not so intimidating. So I will show pictures of meals that we eat here. I post at least one of those a week so that people can see something really simple. This week it was a chopped salad, niblet organic corn, and like a baked chicken breast. It was a lovely meal. And the chopped salad had tomatoes and fennel and sort of a Greek style dressing and cucumbers. And so, the whole idea is to help people understand they don't have to be deprived to eat low oxalate. There's ways to do this. And I also post menu plans depending upon what level people subscribe at, so they can get more practical help. For those who are just feeling completely overwhelmed, I've now got, I think about 40 2 and 3 day menu plans. Like you could have fully programmed food for the next 2 months and never have to think about it.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I do have research articles that I post there. So at least once a month, I'm going to dive into the research somewhere and I'm going to try and connect the dots for people. And I also do videos and things. So I've been known from time to time to just have my iPhone set up in my kitchen, cook a recipe, and then talk through any of the aspects of the recipe as I'm doing it. So
that is so great. And you're also on social media. That's where I found you.
Yes. So I like Twitter the best, I have to admit. I hang out there. But I am on Facebook. I still volunteer some time involved with the Trying Low Oxalates support group. That was the group that saved me back when we were first finding this diet. And I'm still paying that forward because I do not know where I'd be if we had not had a support group like that.
That's
so
great.
If people want to find me on Facebook, I'm Monique Attinger Nutritionist, although I do have a Low Ox Coach page. I occasionally hang out at Instagram. I'm trying to find where's the right places to be to get the word out more than anything.
That's wonderful. It has been such a joy to have you here today. And, you've opened up probably a new world for a lot of us. And we really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's become my passion. As I said, went back in my 50s, retrained as a nutritionist because managing oxalate in my diet was a game changer. I was doing everything right and just getting sicker. And so for anybody else where you're trying to do everything right and you're just getting sicker, this could be what's kind of running under the radar and might be thwarting some of your efforts.
And definitely a possible game changer.
Right.
Yeah, this has been great. I appreciate you being on the show and hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Omar. Thanks,
Thank
Lori.
you, Monique. You are so welcome. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of This Podcast Burns Fat. We're so excited to have you as a listener, and we're hoping that you really enjoyed the content as well. And if you did, please run over to iTunes and provide a rating and or review. It will go a long way in helping us continuously build our listenership up so that we can provide you with excellent content regarding fat loss, weight management, and just an overall healthy lifestyle. Thanks so much. Have a great night.